Welcome everyone to this legislative briefing on electric school buses. I'm going to start off by introducing our two guest speakers today. Katrina McLaughlin is a clean energy associate at the World Resources Institute, and her work is focused on renewable energy, grid flexibility, electricity market design, and transportation electrification, including electric school buses. Through the Electric School Bus Initiative, WRI is collaborating with partners, including school districts, advocacy organizations, electric utilities, and policymakers to accelerate an equitable transition to electric school buses. And Katrina joins us today to provide an overview of the strategies state legislators are using to help accelerate the adoption of electric school buses. So thank you so much for joining us today. And State Senator Jose Menendez is a public servant who has dedicated his career to serving the people of Texas. He represents the 26th Senatorial District, which encompasses parts of Bexar County, including the city of San Antonio. Senator Menendez has been a champion for improving the state's education system, as well as its utilities and energy infrastructure. And electric school buses, of course, sit at the intersection of all three of these issues. And he's joined us to tell us about a bill that he's filed, which aims to increase assistance to school districts who are seeking federal and state funding for electric school buses, as well as solar panels. So we welcome Senator Menendez as well. My name is Laura Davis, and I am a transportation advocate at PIRG. PIRG is part of the Public Interest Research Group, the Public Interest Network, excuse me, for those of you who are not familiar with us. And as part of this network, we work in very close collaboration with many state-based organizations such as MassPIRG, CalPIRG, and Environment Texas. PIRG works on a wide variety of issues, including product safety, public health, campaign finance reform, and consumer protection. And PIRG's campaign to transform transportation seeks to electrify vehicles, especially school and transit buses, while also increasing the number of people walking, cycling, and riding public transportation for their everyday transportation needs. And I'm going to get us started with an overview of why electric school buses are worth your time. The U.S. school bus fleet is our country's largest public transportation asset. And every day, 480,000 yellow school buses transport over 20 million children to and from school. And today, diesel powers more than 90% of the school buses on our roads. And this is a problem both for public health and for the climate. Diesel engines emit a complex mixture of toxic air pollution, and it is classified by the EPA as a likely carcinogen. The health effects of diesel exhaust and the health effects of the many substances contained in it have been studied for decades. And we know that inhaling diesel pollution is bad for human health, and especially bad for our children, since their respiratory systems are still developing. Exposure to diesel emissions can cause or worsen respiratory disease, including asthma. And for students, these illnesses often result in absences from school and a loss of learning. Furthermore, tailpipe emissions, especially the ultrafine particulate matter found in diesel exhaust, have a direct impact on the function and development of the brain. And breathing diesel exhaust can actually lead to cognitive impairment that is observable in test scores. And finally, diesel pollution contributes to smog and acid rain, and these vehicles emit high levels of greenhouse gases that directly contribute to climate change, which is obviously a threat for our children's future. Electric school buses are the safest and healthiest choice for students. And the good news is this technology is here today and already serving the needs of students across the country. Electric buses are reliably transporting children in urban, rural, and suburban communities in both very hot and very cold climates. They've even been serving the needs of students in Alaska, where an electric school bus has been delivering children to school in temperatures as low as 38 degrees below zero. Technically speaking, school buses are an ideal candidate for electrification. They typically drive fixed routes over limited geographic areas at relatively low speeds. They make frequent stops, which allows them to take advantage of regenerative braking technology. And they frequently idle to keep the buses warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And they're also centrally maintained and fueled. So today's electric school buses are capable of replacing diesel buses for the vast majority of routes in operation today. Switching from diesel to electric buses eliminates tailpipe emissions and the health risks associated with diesel exhaust. And they also have the potential to save districts money. With fewer moving pieces, no engine or exhaust systems to maintain, and less brake wear due to regenerative braking, electric buses typically require less maintenance than their diesel counterparts. And depending on the price of electricity and diesel fuel, the refueling savings can be very significant. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, converting America's school bus fleet to electric power will have two important effects. First, electric buses generate less than half the greenhouse gas emissions than diesel or propane models, even when you account for the generation of electricity with fossil fuels. So the direct impact of electrifying the country's fleet would be a reduction of roughly 5.3 million metric tons of emissions per year. Electrifying America's school fleet will also jumpstart domestic manufacturing and battery development for medium and heavy duty vehicles. And this could have very significant knock-on effects, both for electric vehicle deployment as well as job creation. Electric school buses are also quieter than traditional school buses, which means a more peaceful environment for students and drivers and less ambient noise pollution in the community. And finally, electric school buses have the potential to bring even greater community benefits if they are equipped with technology that allows them to deliver power to buildings and deliver power back to the grid. And this technology, which is known as vehicle-to-grid technology, can allow electric school buses to do things like sell power back to the grid during peak demand events or provide power to critical infrastructure during power outages. Now, with the rollout of the Clean School Bus program through the EPA, electric buses are starting to hit the road all over the country. Last year, nearly 2,000 districts applied for funding and awards were granted to school districts in 50 states and several US territories. The overwhelming enthusiasm for the program prompted the EPA to double the amount of funding they awarded last year. But federal grants alone will not be enough to electrify all 480,000 school buses in the country. State governments have a huge role to play in overcoming funding challenges, ensuring utilities are ready to support electrification efforts. States also have the opportunity to provide technical assistance to school districts as they plan to transition to electric vehicles. And this is especially important for school districts that might not have the time and the resources to do this on their own. So there is state legislation pending in many states, and Katrina is going to go over many of those with us. One quick example from California, AB 579 will require all new school buses purchased after 2035 to be zero-emission school buses, and it will also create incentives to improve the economics and accessibility of clean school buses in the state. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Katrina to talk more about how our state legislators are taking action, but I do also want to make you aware of these reports that were published by PIRG, which can give you more background information on the topic, and I'll share those out by email. So with that, I'll hand it over to Katrina.
Great, thank you, Laura. And thank you to PIRG for putting on this webinar. It's great to be here and talk about electric school buses. So as was mentioned, my name is Katrina McLaughlin, and I'm an associate with WRI. In this presentation, I will be giving a brief overview of WRI and our electric school bus initiative, give a quick snapshot of the current state of play on ESBs, and highlight some of the ways that state legislatures have taken action on electric school buses. Next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with WRI, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit research organization that works at the intersection of the environment, economic development, and human well-being. We strive to take a data-based and rigorous analytical approach to helping solve the world's most pressing problems across climate, energy, and a host of other topics. Next slide, please. So we are now excited to bring that expertise to electric school buses. With the Electric School Bus Initiative, we have the ambitious goal of working to electrify the entire U.S. school bus fleet by 2030. To do this, we work with partners across these 5 key stakeholder groups to help make the electric school bus opportunity a reality. And all of this is done with the foundational understanding that the transition to electric school buses must be equitable and that no community should be left behind. Next slide, please. So why do we do this work? Laura touched on many of these, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but just wanted to make the point that electrifying school buses brings multiple benefits, including reduced carbon emissions, cleaner air, lower operating costs for school districts, resiliency opportunities with vehicle to X or vehicle to grid technologies, and that really we see this work as part of the electrification of the full medium and heavy duty vehicle sector, which is critical since we know that it is these vehicles that have a disproportionate health impact on frontline communities that are overburdened with pollution. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to cover just a little bit of some of the current state of play on electric school buses. And the sort of punchline is there's a lot happening. So this is from one of the data sets that we publish on a recurring basis on our website that tracks electric school bus commitments. This data is now a little bit outdated. It's from June of 2022. But as you can see, electric school buses are operating in every type of community, from the nation's largest cities to rural and mountainous communities, and includes successful cases in cold weather environments like Alaska and Michigan, as was mentioned. Next slide, please. So this momentum towards electric school buses picked up a lot of steam with the EPA's Clean School Bus Program. So again, this is a program that was created through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that has up to $5 billion for cleaner school buses. We saw the first round of funding for these buses that went out in October of last year. And within that first funding round, the EPA awarded nearly $1 billion in funds, which was nearly double what they had originally announced to do in this funding round due to the overwhelming demand from districts. 95% of the awards were for electric school buses, and really just want to emphasize the point that future rounds of funding will be coming over the next 4 years, with more than $4 billion still on the table. Next slide, please. So what this means is that at this point, electric school bus awards just from that first round of funding have gone out in every state and territory. So if there's one takeaway that I want you to take away from this presentation, it's that an electric school bus is coming to a district in your state, and that there is a key role for states to be playing to help support this transition. Next slide, please. So what do we see that role for states to be? So a key role here is in raising awareness about the EPA program and supporting districts through the application and planning process, and then implementation support once the federal funds start to flow. So this technical assistance is especially important for under-resourced and smaller districts that may have limited staff capacity to dedicate to the application process and navigating a new fuel type. Next slide, please. So beyond supporting the federal EPA program, states, of course, have a prime role in supporting the transition to cleaner school buses. So if we're looking to state legislatures, these are some of the 5 key areas that you can pursue. Wanted to really highlight here the second point on investing dedicated funding. It's not just federal dollars that are needed. We still see a significant incremental cost gap between diesel and electric buses. And so we need stable and ongoing funding to help overcome that gap. And state dollars can help leverage the existing federal funds coming out of the EPA and make sure that districts are able to fully cover the costs going forward, and more districts are able to electrify. Next slide, please. So now I wanted to give a small flavor of the variety of approaches that state legislatures have taken. As you can see, there's been a lot that's been done over the past couple of years on electric school bus legislation. So this can include transition timelines, which I'll be covering more briefly on, funding programs at either a state agency, or authorization for utility programs that are overseen by state public utility commissions. We've also seen some more technical changes to state student transportation funding formulas within education departments, and then also various economic development initiatives or manufacturing support. Next slide, please. So 2022 was a watershed year for targets. We saw the first statewide commitments to electrify school bus fleets, and the first of these was from New York, which has one of the biggest school bus fleets in the country. Next slide, please. And we are seeing more of these already in current sessions. So this list is not exhaustive, only wanted to cover some of the states that we've seen so far, and give it a little sense of the variety of we've seen. So as you can see, multiple fleet transition bills have been introduced already. And some of the ways in which they vary include whether they apply only to new purchases and contracts, or whether they cover the full fleet, whether they apply to only school buses, or if they apply to all public fleets within a state, say transit fleets and state vehicle fleets. We also see bills that take different approaches on whether it is a standalone bill purely on school buses, or whether it's included in a broader, fleet electrification or climate package. And most obviously, there's a difference in dates and timelines here. And as you can see, there's even cases in Hawaii and Massachusetts where there are different bills moving that have different timelines. Also wanted to note that this slide only covers fleet transition bills. It is not exhaustive of the many approaches that states are taking to support electric school buses. There are also bills that impact electric school buses moving the session in California, in New York, in Florida, and in Texas, which I know we'll hear more about from Senator Menendez shortly. Okay, so just wanted to end really quickly with saying that if you or districts within your state have questions about electric school buses, WRI is here to help. We have created many publicly accessible tools and resources that you can find. Also wanted to call in particular some of our more recent examples of work that might be useful, including a market study and buyer's guide, which shows current models on the market. We have a total cost of ownership tool. And we also have a data set of state fleets. So you can look up what is the data on fuel type or age of buses within your state. And you can find, next slide for the final slide. So you can find all of these and more at our website, electricschoolbusinitiative.org. You can also email me and I can direct you to the correct person on our team. So with that, I would like to say thank you and hand it back to Laura for the rest of the session.
Thank you so much for that, Katrina. I'm going to hand it over now to Senator Jose Menendez from Texas, who's going to tell us about a bill that he's filed this session.
Good. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I want to thank y'all, and I want to thank Environment Texas for inviting me to speak today with you all. I hope that it's been the Zoom era. I'm making sure I'm not still muted. Good. Okay, thanks. We were very, very happy to file Senate Bill 238, which would allow the state's Energy Conservation Office to directly assist public schools with applying for federal and state funding for implementation of electric school buses and solar panels in our public schools. There may be people who may be asking themselves, wow, Texas, someone's actually trying to make this happen here. Look, energy efficiency is at the forefront, and for me, and it continues to be an increasingly imperative situation down here. For those of you who may not remember, 2 years ago, we had the Winter Storm Uri, which led to the very untimely and unnecessary deaths of many Texans. And even with this past storm we just had at the beginning of February, it left thousands of Texans without power for a couple of weeks at this last time. And so with the growing allocation of federal funds towards clean and renewable infrastructure, such as electric school buses and solar panels, it is no better time than now for us to move forward with the necessity of these types of initiatives. And so I'm trying to do everything that I can in a state that typically is not all that friendly as of late towards renewable energy by implementing electric school buses in our public schools, because people may not realize this, but the stored energy in the batteries would be able to distribute stored energy back to the power grid, and therefore it would be available during times, these winter storms, when the children aren't going to be going to school anyway. In addition to all the wonderful things that we're going to be doing by not putting out more diesel fuel fumes into the air, the harmful gases exposing the children and the drivers to all of this, we get to do so much more. And so This is also why we're trying to implement the solar panels to allow our schools to serve possibly as an emergency safe shelter during a storm for people who lose power. And we want to figure out ways to help taxpayers with the increasing cost of electricity. And so the demand for energy initiatives in our public schools has been demonstrated by our federal government through the Energy Protection EPA, through its Clean School Bus Program, which has already awarded Texas over $50.8 million for 134 electric school buses. And according to the EPA, each federal dollar, and I hope if I'm being redundant, I'm sorry, each federal dollar invested in this clean diesel projects has led to $11 to $30 in savings from a public health benefit, and more than $2 in savings on fuels that our taxpayers are currently paying for. So right now, there are 51 Texas projects that have already been waitlisted, furthering the need for assistance in applying for these programs to increase energy efficiency here in Texas. And the State Energy Conservation Office, is also known as SECO, is based out of the Comptroller's Office, which facilitates grants programs to fund energy efficiency programs. And it may also be used to implement electric school buses and solar panels. For those of you who may not know, the state's electric grid, being that it's mostly independent from the other two grids across the nation, the two national grids, it is currently one of the most important issues that we have for Texans, because we've proven that we don't have as reliable or resilient a grid as we'd like. And that reliability of keeping the lights on and the heat on when you need it, or the air conditioning on when you need it, every single time at a price that can be afforded, a price that people on a fixed income can afford, it's imperative. But by the same token, we should be doing everything we can to make sure that we're also trying to keep the air and the water quality clean, and not make it worse. And so I think that there is no better way to do than by using renewable energy. And so that's why I filed Senate Bill 238. It's going to be one of many bills that's going to work towards accomplishing this goal and assuring that energy efficiency in the state of Texas in our schools is moving forward, as far as also a clean and energy environment, clean air, attaining those goals, and also cutting the cost to our public schools, which means cutting the cost to our taxpayers through clean energy. I think this is a win-win-win solution that I hope that we get accomplished this session. I want to thank you for asking me to be a small part of this conversation today, and I look forward to any questions, comments, or rude remarks. All are welcome.